I am now joined by the former Conservative MP and most distinguished lawyer, Sir Bill Cash. Bill, thank you for coming in.
Yes.
You were a Shadow Attorney General.
Right.
And the Shadow Attorney General today has come out very clearly to say that this is in line with international law. I wonder if you could explain that a bit.
Well, it really is. I mean, for example, under the United Nations Charter, people have an inherent right to defend themselves. That's number one. Number two, not only do they have an inherent right, but it also applies to your allies as well. And it's perfectly clear that for an accumulated period of time, Iran has been attacking other countries, either by proxy or alternatively by direct action. And therefore, the whole of the stability, not only of the Middle East, but of other parts of the world, have been destabilised by what they've been doing. So on any rational basis, as David Wilson, the current Shadow Attorney General, says, the fact is that you have an inherent right, and it's also to defend yourself and your allies. And the further point also is that international law is a kind of movable feast. I mean, it's what you want to say. It's like words mean what you choose.
Can you explain that more? Because we know what statute law is and we know what the common law is. How does international law fit in with that? Well,
it's not interpreted in the same way as you quite rightly said in your opening, because basically it can mean, rather like Lewis Carroll, you remember, words mean what you choose them to mean. The question is who is to be master, that is all. And I think that what's been going on recently is an illustration of the problem of trying to interpret something which has got no ultimate interpretation. And I think that the current situation in Iran has created a completely unstable situation. Action was needed for all the reasons that you put forward and David Wilson has as well, which I happen to agree with very strongly. International law doesn't have an ultimate jurisdiction. So we had to take some action. And it wasn't just, in my opinion, a matter of whether or not you're sitting on the fence. It's the chopping and changing, which I find so offensive, because nobody could seriously have doubted what was going to be happening in the immediate future. And actually, President Trump has actually made a submission already under what's called Article 51 of the UN Charter. And what that says is, quite clearly, nothing in the Charter shall impair the inherent right of individual of collective self-defence if an armed attack occurs against a member of the United Nations. Has anybody suggested that there hasn't been an attack on Israel?
Well, there have been endless attacks on Israel, and Iran has been the funder and sponsor of Hamas and Hezbollah
and all that. So
for
it's
decades.
So obvious. It's been going on, and as Trump said, we've had enough.
So why do you think Starmer is so indecisive in this area?
Because he's being pushed around by his Attorney General.
OK, so tell me the position of the Attorney General, because you're one of the few people, I think, who understands the constitutional importance of the Attorney General and the power of its legal advice across government.
Yeah, the Attorney General is in a very special place. He is entitled, according to the rules that have grown up over the last couple of centuries or so, to make a decision. And when he does do so as a matter of legal opinion, it is binding on the entire government legal service, number one. Number two, under the Ministerial Code, when the Attorney General makes a decision, it is not only binding, but it also effectively binds the Prime Minister. That's what you're watching at the moment. And this complete vendetta, or let's put it the other way around, this rather vindictive approach against our own national interests by invoking international law. How often have we heard it said by the Attorney General and by Starmer himself that international law is the be-all and end-all? That is their main motivation on so many different things.
But therefore the government of the country has been handed over by the Prime Minister to the Attorney General and taken out of the hands of the whole of the rest of the Cabinet.
Well, that is the problem. And actually, in my opinion, I mean, what I'd like to know is there not another opinion? The opinion that was given today in a summary, not dissimilar to the one they did over Iraq when Peter Goldsmith was the Attorney General all those years ago.
Well, I was going to come to that because Peter Goldsmith was appointed in replacement of John Morris.
Yes.
Actually, a cousin of mine, as it happens, but that's not very relevant. Yeah. Because John Morris had said that Iraq wasn't legal and the Prime Minister changed attorney to get one who would give him the answer he wanted. So Blair, for all his many faults, at least was willing to lead the country.
Well, that is a very interesting point, and I can only say that I completely get what you're saying. But the important point for me is this, that the Attorney General has got a complete fixation about international law. They've changed the ministerial conduct rules to invoke international law. Did you know, for example, in Germany, international law takes precedence over domestic law? Here in the United Kingdom, that is simply not the case. True. And therefore, there is no need to give priority to international law in the way they're doing it. It's shocking.
But if you're the Attorney General, don't you want to tell everybody that international law takes priority? Because who judges international law in the UK?
Well,
the Attorney General.
Exactly.
So it's an incredibly effective way of giving political power to you, not just over Iran, but over a whole swathe of government policy issues.
Correct. Absolutely. And it's very dangerous too, because if you want to protect your own country, and even in line with what the United Nations Charter says, you have an inherent right to defend yourself as a democracy. The last thing you want, absolutely the last thing, is to make an assumption that the international law prevails.
And who is Hermer? He is a peer. So he's not democratically elected himself. So you've got the ultimate decision within the government taken by somebody who has never faced the electorate.
Well, I'd also say, actually, that Starmer and Hermer are so close. I mean, after all, they're in the same chambers. I believe Hermer was pupil to Starmer, and so it goes on. I mean, the relationship is very close, but it's the conviction that both of them have that international law prevails over everything else, and it's just not right. And I think rather than just saying, or rather than saying that they're sitting on the fence, it's the chopping and changing. I believe there's another opinion which must exist, which they had as in the back drawer, which had already been drafted before this attack took place. And I believe that actually that ought to be produced and put in the Library of the House of Commons as an absolute necessity. Because I think this present one overlaps it, and I also think is probably inconsistent with the first opinion.
Bill, thank you very much indeed.